Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, good morning. Please let me introduce myself. My name is Adelina Syakinawaty Dongoran. My nickname is Adel. Now, I will explain to you about new material. The new material about intercultural communication. This is a cross-cultural understanding course. Definition of intercultural communication. Intercultural communication is defined as a communication situation between individuals or groups who have different linguistic and cultural origins. It comes from the following basic definition. Communication is an active relationship that is built between people through language, and intercultural means that communicative relationships are between people from different cultures, where culture in a manifestation structure human behavior and social life in specific national and local contexts. For example, political, linguistic, economic, institutional, and professional. Definition of intercultural communication according to Stella Tintume is defined as the symbolic exchange process whereby individuals from two or more different cultural communities negotiate shared meanings in an interactive situation. Communication can be defined as the exchange of meaning. This involves the sending and receiving of information between a sender and a receiver. This happens not only through the use of the words, but also through nonverbal factors, such as gesture and facial expression. The message received can be very different from the message was sent. The common model for communication is shown in figure below. First, source. Second, encoding. 3, message. 4, channel. 5, noise. 6, receiver. 7, decoding. 8, receiver response. 9, feedback. And 10, context. Intercultural communication, sometimes used synonymously with a cross-cultural communication, is a form of communication that aims to share information across different cultures and social groups. It is used to describe the wide range of communication processes and problems that naturally appear within an organization made up of individuals from different religious, social, ethnic, and educational backgrounds. Aside from language, intercultural communication focuses on social attributes, thought patterns, and the culture of different groups of people. It also involves understanding the different cultures, language, and customs of people from other countries. Intercultural communication plays a role in social science such as anthropology, cultural studies, linguistics, psychology, and communication studies. Intercultural communication is also referred to as the base for international business. Generally, in communication, we seek to reduce uncertainty. Communication with strangers involves relatively greater degrees of uncertainty due to the difficulty in predicting a stranger's response. We experience uncertainty with regard to the stranger's attitudes, feelings, and beliefs. The increased uncertainty in interaction with strangers is accompanied by higher levels of anxiety, as we anticipate a wider array of possible negative outcomes. We may worry about damage to our self-esteem from feeling confused and out of control. We may fear the possibility of being incompetent or being exploited. We may worry about being perceived negatively by the stranger. The problems in intercultural communication usually come from problems in message transmission. In communication between people of the same culture, the person who receives the message interprets is based on values, beliefs, and expectation for behavior similar to those of the person who sent the message. When this happens, the way the message is interpreted by the receiver is likely to be fairly similar to what the speaker intended. However, when the receiver of the message is a person from a different culture, the receiver uses information from his or her culture to interpret the message. The message that the receiver interpreted may be very different from what the speaker intended. A. Barriers to intercultural communication. 1. Attitude. Sample cases. A. Globalization means that there is now one business culture everywhere in the world. B. If they want to do business with me, then they will have to adapt my culture. C. When in Indonesian, do as the Indonesian do. D. It's impossible to generalize cultures. There are many differences. E. Today I work with Indonesian, tomorrow I will meet my American partners. I can possibly learn all I need to know about all the culture I have to deal with. F. What I need when I go abroad is a list of do's and doesn't. G. Intercultural training just confirms stereotype. 2. Perception. The fact that people perceive the same thing in different ways is particularly important in intercultural communication. The way we perceive is culturally determined, and the general lack of awareness of this is another barrier to intercultural communication. 3. Stereotype. A stereotype is a fixed idea or image that many people have a particular type of person, thing, or event, but sometimes it is not true in reality. Generalization and categories are necessary, but when they are too rigid, they can be a barrier to the effective interpretation of a situation. In intercultural communication, it is vital to distinguish between what is part of a person's cultural background and what is part of their personality. 4. Interpretation. What is the problem in this situation? A Japanese businessman is negotiating with an Australian partner, Chen. The deal will be very difficult. Andrew, well, what I can help to solve the problems, Chen? Chen, blah blah. This is the case of misinterpretation, in which two people have interpreted the same statement in completely different ways. For the Japanese or Chen, the message was quite clear. For him, the statement that it would be very difficult means there would be no deal. He expresses this indirectly to be polite and to avoid loss of face. An Australian, not being aware of this, thought that there were some problems that could be resolved. Gary Kantz, in Gibson 2000, suggests 3 ways of checking our interpretation of other people's behavior. A. Perception checking. The aim of perception checking is to ensure that our interpretation of the other person's behavior is what he or she means it to be. First, we have to describe what we thought the other person meant before asking if this interpretation is correct. Even this process is thoroughly determined, and for people from some culture could to be dialogue. If you are an individual communicating with a collective, it is important to keep in mind that collectivists may not feel comfortable answering direct questions. In this case, you may have to ask your perception checking questions more directly. B. Listening effectively. It is important to distinguish between hearing or the physical process and listening, which involves much more attention and includes absorbing new information, checking it with what you already know, categorizing it, selecting ideas, and predicting what is coming next. Active listening involves showing the speaker that we are involved in the conversation, trying to understand them better or by asking questions, for instance, or starting what they have said. C. Giving feedback. This is the verbal or non-verbal response to others. Again, the ways feedback is given vary widely across cultures, but it often useful to follow the following guidelines. First, be specific. Second, separate the feedback from the person. 3. Present the problem as a mutual one. 4. Mix negative with positive feedback. 5. Provide feedback at an appropriate time. 6. Use a statement whenever possible. 5. Culture shock. Culture shock is precipitated by the existence that results from losing all our familiar signs and symbols of social intercourse. The signs or cues include the 1,001 ways in which we orient ourselves to the situation of daily life. Further discussion about culture shock will be in the next chapter. 6. Nonverbal behavior. While language is the primary means of communication, nonverbal behavior also communicates. Nonverbal patterns include gesture, facial expression, eye contact, body movement, touching, and the use of the space and time. Gestures are an obvious source of misunderstanding because they may have different meanings. However, other forms of nonverbal communication may cause particular difficulty, partly because we do not think about them much. Therefore, we may not be able to figure out what is causing the misunderstanding or why we feel uncomfortable. For example, patterns of touching vary a great deal in different cultures. In some cultures, people frequently touch, kiss, and hold hands in public. In other countries, this is not acceptable. In some cultures, people stand very close together when they talk, but in other cultures, they stand relatively far apart. In some cultures, a person who looks down while talking appears dishonest, while in other cultures, looking down shows respect. In some cultures, you are expected to be on time for an appointment, but in other cultures, you are expected to be late. All of these differences have the potential to cause problems. B. Cultural learning shows different phases of cultural learning. At the lowest level is the belief that all people are alike. Then comes a recognition that there are differences and acceptance of the differences, saying ways of synthesizing the different ways, selecting and making things run smoothly. The process of cultural learning can be helped along by experience, reflection, and training. Intercultural training not only provides information but also develops skills and encourage attitudes to enable people to progress along the cultural learning curve. C. Dealing with difference. Based on the search mark in Gibson 2000 list, in order of priority, what personal manager in German companies look for in international manager? 1. Social competence. 2. Openness to other ways of thinking. 3. Cultural adaptation. 4. Professional excellence. 5. Language skill. 6. Flexibility. 7. Ability to manage or work in a team. 8. Adaptability of the family. 9. patience. 10. Sensitivity. Note that on the list, professional excellence doesn't come at the top of the list. If technical skill is the only criterion for working abroad, the result will be rarely successful. Where aggression, speed, and competitiveness may be important in monoculture environment, they could be dangerous in intercultural one, where qualities such as adaptability and high tolerance for ambiguity are more important. D. Improving intercultural communication. It is essential that people research the cultures and communication conventions of the whom they purpose to meet. This will minimize the risk of making the elementary mistakes. It is also prudent to set a clear agenda so that everyone understands the nature and purpose of the interaction. In interaction with people from foreign culture, a person who is interculturally competent understands the cultural-specific concepts of perception, thinking, feeling, and acting. The basic requirements for intercultural competence are 1. Break the assumption. 2. Empathize. 3. Involve us. 4. Discourage her mentality. 5. Avoid resentive behavior. The basic requirements for intercultural competence are 1. Break the assumption. Everyone makes or has assumptions about others. Assumptions are beliefs rather than object thought and are usually influenced by a number of subject factors. For intercultural communication to truly work, people need to assess their assumptions and ask themselves why they hold those ideas or beliefs. By doing so and even openly examining them with others, the initial barrier to intercultural communication is overcome. 2. Empathy. In order to come to appreciate and understand people from different cultures, empathy is vital. Through putting yourself in someone else's shoes, you come to see or appreciate their point of view. 3. Involving others in tasks or decision making empowers and builds strong relationships. Using intercultural diversity is in exchange a more creative approach to problem solving as it incorporates different points of view. 4. Discourage her mentality. Her mentality refers to a closed and one-dimensional approach, such as a way of thinking cracks creativity, innovation, and effacement, as people are restricted in how to think, approach, and engage with people or challenge. Intercultural communication can only flourish and therefore contribute if people are encouraged to think as individuals, bring their cultural influences to the table, and share ideas that may be outside the box. 5. Avoid insensitive behavior. People can and do behave in culturally insensitive ways. By attacking someone's person, you attack their culture and therefore their dignity. This can only be divisive. Effective communication depends on the informal understanding among the parties involved that are based on the truths developed between them. When trust exists, there is implicit understanding within communication. Cultural differences may be overlooked, and problems can be dealt with more easily. The meaning of trust and how it is developed and communicated vary across societies. Similarly, some cultures have a greater propensity to be trusting than others. Some of the benefits of intercultural communication are: first, learn another culture, to adapt to differences. 3. Building bridge between cultures. 4. Improve communication skill. Thank you for watching my presentation slide. Alright, this is all I can say more, and I less apologies. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.